Well, it's Saturday the 15th of April, and this is episode 2313 of 301 Online, a personal podcast 301 seconds in length, written, recorded, and edited by me, at the JMO. I've been lucky enough to have several conversations about world running recently. One of the topics these conversations shared was the rise of the term lore. We talked about the nuances of story, narrative, and history in co-created worlds. How and where it gets produced and by whom, and what does the rise of the word lore mean when it's used in the context of the real world? Traditionally, lore is a body of knowledge, one that encompasses story, myths, and traditions, passed down from one person to another within a particular culture or community. Lore provides narratives or beliefs that help shape a group's collective identity, history, and understanding of the world, a cultural expression that often serves to preserve cultural heritage, entertain, educate, or convey moral lessons and values, as in folklore. Years ago, on 301, I talked about how I narrowly avoided doing a PhD in corporate folklore. I wanted to use ethnographic methods to explore the depth and breadth of an organisation's collective memory. Organisations are techno-social systems, or simply put, worlds. They have systematised and official processes of remembering and ways of working, and less official ways of understanding things like mission, values, or strategy. In 2023, you can ask, what's your company's lore? And a decent number of people will understand what you're asking, but back in 2014, not so much. It was quite hard to convince any colleagues at Gartner to hear me out. In his 2022 series on lore, Venkat Rao wrote that a millennial management science is being born in the introduction to Lands of Lorecraft. He then says lore is the evil twin of marketing. Marketing is the story insiders tell outsiders to influence them in some way, and lore is the story insiders tell themselves to manage their own psyches. He continues, lore cannot be engineered in the same way marketing can. You are not pumping messaging into scarce channels pointed at distinct markets. You act like a gardener, trying to make your own garden thrive, cutting away unhealthy bits and supporting the healthy bits. He goes on, Lorecraft is a natural and adaptive intellectual response to the automation of vast swathes of managerial/leadership functions and organisational processes. I don't fully agree about the marketing point, but I do think that lore as a response to organisational processes changing is a very good way of putting it. I make no distinction between corporations, MMOs, Twitter, personal banking apps, or the global supply chain. Each represents a hybrid reality, born from interactions within techno-social systems. The rise of lore is more than just a millennial management science. It's no surprise that the first generation to grow up with video games has embraced the term. We are the first generation to grasp what agency and its limits is inside of complex and dynamic technical systems. It's the lens we look at the world through. I want to take a moment to explore this lens and sketch out a key argument I'm making in my metaverse book, The Web Was a Side Quest. The lens through which, consciously or not, my generation comprehends the intricacies of techno-social systems with, has its roots in one of the most significant social technologies of the 20th century, Dungeons and Dragons. Before D&D and the elusive shift of the 1970s, it was rare for people to encounter systems of any kind, let alone games that produced narrative. There are some exceptions, of course, the I Ching, Tarot, wargames, etc. But think about Monopoly, battleships, even chess, kinds of rule-bound simulations. Yes, but narrative engines they are not. D&D and its logics fused with computing almost immediately. Think Zork and MUDs. Subsequently, over the last 50 years, D&D has become the default mental blueprint for how individuals and groups with a shared set of goals construct social norms, interact, and understand how to coordinate inside of techno-social systems. The techno system of D&D is its rule set, which, when injected with meaning by people, gives rise to the simulation, inside of which players navigate and narrative unfolds. This narrative unfolding, as understood by people, in turn, is called lore. The same is true of startups, DAOs, or any groups of people coordinating inside of techno-social systems. They all have formal processes and procedures, rules, and protocols. These give rise to a technical simulation that, when injected with things like mission and values, we call the world of work. Then things happen, and we call it lore. The growing importance of lore in both media franchises and organisations reflects a new and emerging kind of cultural sense-making, one arrived at through the lens of a social technology designed for exploring and co-creating inside of a simulated world. The ambient diffusion of D&D through computing and other media has shaped how we interact with, navigate, and build techno-social systems. I try to impress on people just how crucial it is for individuals and organisations to recognise the existence of this new way of sense-making and the power it has for shaping collective identities, fostering engagement, and navigating worlds.